Alright guys, we finally get to fight, or almost get to fight the Civil War. We're going to get to some of the primary causes. We've been talking about sectionalism, we've talked about slavery, and these are all major issues that were brewing in America. I mean, we talked about all the way back from like the early 1800s, and these are long processes. Today we're going to look at the three primary issues that will cause a civil war. These issues have been going way, 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 way back, as we talked about in this last week. But let's synthesize this. What's the main idea about these three primary causes of the Civil War? Oops, sorry. First is sectionalism. Now, we talked about sectionalism. I bashed in your brains about it. I mean, we've gone on and on about it. But the primary thing is that sectionalism is a big issue. This started way, way back when the first three colonies developed in America. There was already an issue. Sectionalism developed all the way back when the colonies first developed, and we still have that problem today. If you think about it, we are still sections of the United States. The South is a distinct difference from the North, which is a distinct difference from the West. I mean, we all have that, West Coast mentality, New York mentality, Texas mentality, Deep South. We all still kind of have the sections in our nation. But prior to the Civil War, these are much more distinct. And the reason why is that both the North and the South, these differences became unresolvable. And due to the fact these differences became unresolvable, the only way to fix it is for one to dominate over the other. And that's what we're going to see following the Civil War. Alright, next question time. Teacher's going to pause the video and go over this question with you. I'll be back with you in a sec. Alright guys, so I'm back. Let's go to the second major issue, and that's states' rights. As you see down here, I have a picture of this country with all the different flags of the United States. Now, state rights was an issue that developed during the Tariffs of Abomination and then during the Civil War. A lot of people still call on states' rights to try to change laws that they don't like. You remember about a year or two ago with the Affordable Care Act, or what people called Obamacare. Texans were trying to say, oh, we're going to secede, we're going to leave the Union because of states' rights. States' rights is an issue that people use when they're not, or some states use when they're not getting what they want. And it's a way that they try to say, look, we don't like this, and we're going to try to change it in our state. Now, it really rarely works. But why the South use the state rights right before the Civil War? Well, the South wasn't dumb. They realized that they were losing a ton of political power. The North was gaining tons of power because they had more people, more industry. They were gaining more states. Free labor was really developing way over slave labor, and the Southerners were freaking out because they're like, "Oh my God, what's going to happen? We're going to lose our identity. We're just going to be Northerners." They're freaking out. So what the Southerners did was they came up with a concept, states' rights. They basically used the 10th Amendment, which granted all power not explicitly stated in the Constitution to those for the states. And they said, well, because slavery is not definitely issued, or is not definitely stated in the Constitution, then that means we can decide if we have slaves or not. And because of that, you got to stay out of this. You got to leave us alone. But the North also had problems. They said, with the federal government, we decide over issues that's about the entire nation. So the South thought slavery was just a localized thing in each state, where the Union, the North, thought it was a federal issue. Because slavery was all in tons of different states, it's a national issue, not a state issue. All right, so we got another question time. I'm going to take a break, let your teacher pause the video, and they'll go over the questions with you. All right, guys, so I'm back. Slavery, our third and final major issue. Now, we talked about slavery this entire year, but the main thing I want you to remember is that not only did slavery create the culture of the South, but slavery is the main divide between the North and the South. Because you can look at states' rights, you can look at sectionalism, you can look at the economics, all that in essence is the argument of slavery. And here's the thing. The North thought that because we're industrializing as a nation, because we're industrializing as the world, we don't need slaves. The South thought, well, we've had slaves ever since we came to this country. In fact, like I said up here, Virginia, during the colonial era, started using slavery. And they said because of that, that's our culture, that's our way of life. It's not only an economic system, it's how we stay lazy. Basically, what it is, rich white guys didn't want to do the work, so like we gotta have slaves because it's our culture, in air quotes. When in all actuality, they're just lazy and want to take a break. But here's the thing: slavery not only made the South money, it also caused the South to lose its power. Because in the North was getting all these new immigrants from Europe to work in its factories. The South wasn't getting any new immigrants. Why would you want to go to a place that doesn't give you any work because they have slaves for that work? So slavery caused the South to slowly die. From the early 1800s on to Civil War, the North progressively got more powerful and the South stayed stagnant. They kept the same power and the same economics because they didn't industrialize the same levels of North. And because North industrializing more quickly, more issues came into place, and which will eventually cause the South to fail and lose the Civil War. All right, guys, last question time. So the teacher's going to pause the video and go over the question with you. I'll be back with you in a sec. All right, guys, I'm back. So these are the three major issues that cause the Civil War. Tomorrow, we're actually going to dive in. I'm going to talk to you about the key people in the Civil War. But before that point, let's go over with your mini lesson for today. So y'all are going to work on learning with graphic organizers on page 276. On a sheet of notebook paper, you're going to answer the sections titled Davis's Inaugural Address and Lincoln's Inaugural Address. Because at the onset of the Civil War, at the very beginning of the Civil War, Lincoln was the president of the North, and Jefferson Davis will become the president of the Southern States of America, or the Confederacy. All right, so as always, if you missed any parts, please talk to your teacher. They have the PowerPoint. They'll go back over anything you missed. All right, guys, I'll see y'all tomorrow.